So, Joe, in 20 years, can you imagine what Armstrong County will be like?
No, because it's probably going to be the same as it was the last 20 years.
Well, you can check out some neat facts from Forum for the Future.
The future's here. The education of tomorrow is on Education Today, which starts now.
How does Armstrong County prepare for the future?
Well, come find out with Ed Barlow's Forum on the Future.
If you're confused about 21st century economics, this presentation will help to clear things up.
Yes! What are you doing January 21st?
Well, I'll be at the Forum for the Future. It will take place at Lenape Heights Golf Course in Fort City, PA.
If you're part of the secondary school faculty, your session will be from 8 to 11:30 a.m.
If you're a member of the elementary school faculty, be there from 12:30 to 3:30 p.m. Let's learn more.
Absolutely.
Welcome to Education Today. I'm John Zisch from the Armstrong School District. Tonight we're going to learn about some future trends from the renowned Ed Barlow. He is president of Creating the Future Incorporated. His advice is highly sought after from corporations and other organizations. And on January 21st, he spoke to all Armstrong School District teachers at their mid-year training. We're very glad to have you with us tonight, Mr. Barlow. Welcome to Education Today.
John, nice to be here. Appreciate it.
Yes. Would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. I'm a futurist, and my role is to study what's on the roadway ahead and to interpret that for the clients that invite me to do so. And that professional experience gets me invited all over the world. I just got back from Cairo last week working with a global Marriott conference, and I've worked with all sorts of industries, and it's just, my role is to help people get a better insight as to what they can expect on the road ahead. My professional background includes 22 years in education. That's why I get involved in a lot of education-related conferences. I spent 8 years in healthcare. Part of that was CEO of a medical center. And done a lot of consulting and speaking just all over. So it's been an exciting career endeavor for me, and I must admit I think I'm learning as much as I'm gaining, and so it's just really exciting to be invited here into the county to share with educators how they and what they need to get our young people ready for.
Well, we sure appreciate you taking the time to visit us, and we're very delighted to have you on the program.
Absolutely.
What exactly is Creating the Future Incorporated, the company that you're president of?
It's an organization of which I'm president, and we have a research arm that does research and scans trends. And I, as the principal, am invited to speak at conventions. I design and present and facilitate a lot of think tanks, and I do a fair amount of consulting. So it's an organization that helps folks understand what's coming.
Very good. And you mentioned that you're a futurist. Yeah. How would you define what that is?
Well, my mission is to look at mid to long-term trends. And specifically, I look for how these trends suggest the future will be significantly different from the present, versus maybe an economist that'll give you a next 6 months view. I'll give you a 5 to 10 year view. But again, I try to focus on this is what you can expect that will be significantly different from what you know today, and do it in such a way that people will start preparing to deal with those differences.
I see, okay. I understand you were in Cairo, as you said, last week, and you travel all around the world.
Sure.
What brought you to Armstrong County for 2 days?
Some of your administrators heard me at a statewide conference for career tech educators a couple of years ago, and asked if I would be interested in coming, and I said yes. And schedules were finally worked out, and it was by invitation of some of your your educational leaders here in the area.
That's good. And you spoke to teachers as well as parents in the evening, and then business leaders the next day.
Right. Well, we had secondary school teachers in the morning, and then elementary school teachers in the afternoon, and then In the evening, we spoke to parents and community folk, and then the next morning we had primarily folks in the business community and community leaders. So made sure I was working hard while I was here.
Very good. Well, with all that as good background, can you please highlight some of the future trends,
Sure.
major trends, and how they might affect us here?
Sure. In my presentation, I framed 8 areas of structural change, and my belief is that no individual, no organization, nor community is exempt from these 8 areas of structural change. And I'll just briefly kind of share these with you. The first is the change continuum itself, and that is the pace of everything is just increasing. And things are happening faster, and you've got to be more astute of anticipating what's coming your way. A large part of this is driven by the virtual world now, where you can actually see what's happening in the other side of the world in real time. You can see a glacier melting in real time, and it enhances awareness of what what's going on. And then technology. I mean, you've got technology that can reduce the cycle time of producing stuff. And the second area is the economic restructuring that's going on. We've got globalization. We've got an aging population in this country. We've got a lot of pressures on companies to be price competitive. And so there's an economic restructuring that's going on. Cost of employers providing health care is going up, and cost of providing retirement programs is going up. So there's an economic restructuring that requires a new level of financial literacy, and we really need to get our young people to understand that they're going to have to be more financially self-sufficient. Globalization is huge. The developed world as we know it, except the United States, is aging. Their death rates exceeding their birth rate. Another part of the world called developing is growing. The Indias and the Chinas and the Middle East and the Africas, and not only they are growing in quantity of people, but they're becoming very economically strong areas. The GDP for the developed world for the next 2 or 3 years is expected to be about 3%, but for the developed world, but for the developing world, it's close to 7. You know, China's still going to be around 10. So it's a very different world in terms of where business is and where consumers are, and many companies are trying to position for these emerging markets. The environment, because of the 3 billion extra people we're going to put on the planet, they need natural resources, so the pressure on demand for oil, natural resources, water, all that is increasing, and we've got to be more conservation minded. We've got to think of alternative ways of providing energy for ourselves, and we'll be looking at nuclear, and we'll be looking at wind, and all sorts of alternative ways of dealing with. We've got to be more conservative in the way we use our water, and so you hear this going green. Science and technology, the future is all about molecular science, how things work and how you manipulate how things work. And demographically, we're going to add 100 million people to this country. But at the same time we do that, 70% of the birth rates are ethnically diverse. And at the same time we have an aging population. So even though we're adding people, we've got this aging and diversity phenomenon. Half of this country will be ethnically diverse by 2050. And we've got this emerging immigrant population that's our future workforce that we need to celebrate and put them in pathways to become, well educated. And we need a very different conversation about immigration that we're having right now, because there are an awful lot of very productive folks who, may have come into this country, under more illegal circumstances, but just to send them home and going to work because employers don't have anybody else. So, we really need to be looking at this dynamic of how we look at immigration. I'm not for anybody illegally coming into this country, but if you've been here for a while and been working productively, we ought to find a way to keep you, because we've got this aging population and we won't have enough workers. Organizations are rethinking the way they structure themselves. Close to customer speed to market means you're more flexible. A lot of companies are minimizing the number of full-time, full-benefited workers and relying more on project work and project workers. You've got to be high quality in your output. You have to customize your output, and it's changing the way organizations do business. And then lastly, when you add 100 million people to this country, and that's going to stimulate job growth. We've got low unemployment now, even with a little forecasted slowdown in the economy. And you have an aging workforce. We have a real tsunami. In fact, the forecast is we're going to be about 10 million workers short in this country within the next 4 or 5 years. And globally, there's going to be a shortage of skilled workers too. So it's going to be a global war for talent. You know, you've got the utility industry, 38% of their workers are going to be retiring. You got the aerospace industry of 48% of its workers retiring. You've got a lot of nurses that are retiring. You look across the spectrum, and we're going to be short of workers. So we need to be thinking more strategically about how we prepare that future workforce. And you know, one of the attitudes that prevails across American society is that the area of job growth most significantly will require a 4-year degree. Well, that's not accurate. The area of most significant job growth, that in many areas will include income, good income opportunities, will require a skill certificate or a 2-year degree. And that's where 65 to 70% of the future job growth is going to occur. So, you know, that's where career technical education needs to be employed. We need to reduce the cycle time of getting young people ready for these jobs that will come available quickly. And while we're, you know, short-term getting them skill certificates and 2-year degrees, everybody always ought to aspire to get a 4-year degree. But the cost of getting a 4-year degree is going up. So we need to create earn and learn strategies where I can, you know, get a job, get an income. A lot of employers have tuition reimbursement. Just a whole new way of thinking about how we get these advanced degrees. An example that I use is when Scripps Pharmaceutical down in Palm Beach County, Florida, hires a PhD to do research in pharmaceuticals. For every one PhD they hire, they have to hire 5 2-year trained lab technicians. And that's an example of what I'm trying to say to folk, is we've got an economy that requires folks who are highly skilled technical workers in healthcare and manufacturing. I'm going out to Kansas tomorrow night, and Wednesday I'll be working in Kansas, and they've got this huge aerospace industry in Wichita, Kansas. They've got 48% of their workers retiring. They don't have enough workers in the pipeline, and if they don't find a way to produce these technically skilled workers, that industry you know, seriously declines. So we've got a very different type of dynamic for, and we really need to focus our education on getting skills in young people, and then the economic opportunities and being able to be financially self-sufficient would be tremendous. So that's really a brief overview, and you know, I was doing a conference the other day in Florida, and somebody was saying, well, how would you characterize the future? And I said, we're really in a world of different, and we really don't understand the differences, and we've got to change educational systems and change attitudes, and if we're going to engage these differences. And failure to engage these differences that are occurring will affect our standard of living and quality of life. And so we've got some real, you know, awareness building. We've got some structural change in our systems. And you know, America's been very entrepreneurial historically, but we got a new level of entrepreneurism that we've got to kind of reach to right now.
Wow. That was quite an overview.
It was.
Certainly appreciate that.
Take a deep breath, you'll be all right.
That sounds like a call to action if I ever heard one. Well, we'll be right back after this short break with more education today to talk to Ed Barlow, a futurist who is president of Creating the Future. Stick around.
Before I came to IUP, I had no idea what college would be like or what role I would play or where I'd be in the future. But when I came to IUP, everything changed. I met people who really made me feel like I belonged. I had great classes at a great nationally ranked university. Hi, my name's Megan Miller. I'm a fine arts major, and this is my university.
Welcome back to Armstrong School District's Education Today. Tonight we're talking with Ed Barlow, who's president of Creating the Future. And Ed, I understand you talk to community leaders a lot. What do you tell them?
Well, generally, we alert them to the fact that many communities have an aging political base. And, an aging political base is not real interested in a lot of change. And yet that aging political base needs to understand if we don't make some changes, then it's going to be very difficult to maintain the quality of life. And we really need to sustain, appropriate investment in education. And many folk, as they get older, believe they've already taken care of their kids' education. It's somebody else's responsibility. But if we don't have a properly trained workforce in healthcare, for example, we're not going to be able to take care of these older folks as they age.
That's true.
Either in healthcare environments or in nursing homes or in home-based, application of healthcare. And, we're going to be seriously short of, of healthcare workers. Getting kind of down and dirty here locally, 25% of your population in this county is over the age of 60. And you're very typical of American communities in the northeast part, or this part of the country, where, you're the third oldest state in the U.S. And you've not had the birth rates, or the in-migration that have been experienced in, say, Texas or Florida. And your forecasted school populations are negative in terms of school population in general, in terms of high school. And it's even worse than the state average right here in Armstrong County. And so you really have an issue of making this county a place where people want to live. And, I read a lot of folks saying we've got a lot of brain drain here in the county. Well, sure, to some degree, but the reality is we're 25 million fewer Generation X than we are boomers anyway. So you can't beat yourself up in saying you lost people that were never there in the first place. But the research is pretty clear that Generation X and the next generation, Generation Y, 64% of the time, they move for quality of life, not for a job. And so you've got to make this county attractive for, young people to live. And that's not single-family housing. It's clustered housing. It's condo-type housing. It's more, little entertainment districts. It doesn't have to be a huge city. But, you need to make this. You've got to really think about some social reengineering to offset the aging and the, dimension of out-migration that you've had. I was talking to one of the teachers, this afternoon, and she was saying that, she was very aware of this place in the county that was trying to recruit a company, and the company was going to have need for 200 workers, and it would be a real boost to this local economy. But they chose not to move to the area here in Armstrong County because they saw there wouldn't be the workforce there. Okay? And so they couldn't put a facility in a place where there wouldn't be workers because they needed skilled machinists. And it's one of these areas in the economy, in the manufacturing economy, that's doing well. So, if you're going to create, an environment that has a good tax base and that can be redistributed, including taking care of older folk in their later years, if you're going to be attractive to employers that now need to be globally competitive, and if you're going to create jobs that pay decent incomes, then you've got to make that human capital development a real priority in this area. And that means some real straight talk with older citizens to say, if we don't invest, if we don't make this attractive for young people, then we can just plan the funeral for parts of the county, which is a reality. If you're not birthing, if people are just getting older, then, there are places you can say, well, that town's going to be gone, or this place is going to be gone. Local employers that are here now may have to leave because they don't have a workforce. And you can see the law of diminishing return over time. And so it's time to step up and understand that we're in a global environment with global competition. We've got, the nature of what companies do and the way they do work is changing. And, we really need to make sure that this Armstrong County can be a globally competitive area. And at the end of the day, it's all about, do people want to live here? And does the next generation of worker want to live here or relocate here? Do potential employers want to be here because it's a good place for their workers to live and there's a workforce here? So that's some pretty straight talk that that has to be employed. And I don't know, many of your local elected officials, but politically in this country, you got an aging population that is interested in electing folk to public office to keep things the same and lower taxes. Well, that's not the world we live in. And we better, be realistic about what we need to do if we're going to maintain the same standard of living and quality of life. So it's a tough environment for elected leaders. You see the presidential candidates. It scares me at the lack of the real issues they're talking about. They're all trying to make it seem simple and easy. They've all got the simple ideological solution. And it's a tough love world, and it's going to require tough love responses, and everybody's going to have to be involved and probably feel a little pain to achieve the gain. And it's a real interesting time for this country in general. It's a real interesting time for this state. Your wages basically have been flat, over the last 7 years. There's been, no growth of wages generally average across the state. And this county in particular, because of all the demographics that we have. But I drive around here, I see the beauty, I see the river, and you could create a nice little entertainment district or community along the river, enhance it, could be attractive. It reminds me of Paducah, Kentucky, where they actually subsidized artists and musicians to create kind of an entertainment district, and now young people are living there, and employers are locating there, and so there are some models and some examples of what you can do, but it takes some pretty straight talk, and willing to own up to some of the realities of, if we keep going the way we're heading, we're going to end up in a place that isn't going to be too much fun or isn't going to be too exciting.
Well, that's good, and I appreciate the focus on straight talk. But now that we've had that warning, if you will, can you share some success stories to kind of give us some hope for either organizations or communities that have turned it around?
Well, Paducah, Kentucky, I think is an example. I've done a lot of work in Kentucky. It's just amazing what they did with that little entertainment district, and all of a sudden young people started living there, employers started being there. The community college developed a culinary arts program that's very exciting, and that kind of thing. I mean, Pittsburgh, you are lucky you're near Pittsburgh. There are some exciting things going on to diversify the economy of Pittsburgh, and so I think you can take advantage of that. Now, Pittsburgh an hour away, so you can either create a bedroom community where people commute over there, or you can try to find a way to build an economic base that relies on some of the energy from the Pittsburgh area. So I've seen communities who are within an hour driving distance of some metropolitan areas. You get the Lexington, Kentuckys, the Louisville, Kentuckys. They're doing some interesting things. North Carolina is a phenomenal state. They're doing some very exciting things with some communities there. Oregon is a very entrepreneurial community now. The state capital of Oregon is doing some exciting things. You've got Idaho, and that's done some, Great Falls, Montana is doing some interesting things. And so you've got these, all sorts of communities you won't, normally, think about, that are doing some pretty exciting kinds of things. And again, they're building their future economic base around quality of life and making a desirable place where, middle-aged and younger people who are workforce capable, want to be. There are also some global examples too. Believe it or not, Ho Chi Minh City is now a high-tech hotspot. And I can remember, 35 years ago, we were in a different relationship with that, that part of the world. China is developing some eco-communities that will be models that could be replicated here in the U.S. Chicago, Illinois is becoming a green community. You know, so you know there are all sorts of. There's the coast of the Panhandle in Florida has got some career pathways, career institutes there that are incredible. These career institutes there in the Panhandle of Florida is being used to restructure the entire career ed system in the state of Florida. So there are all sorts of examples of interesting, exciting things that are going on. So
I appreciate that. Well, if you were to leave us with 2 or 3 action items, what would they be?
Well, I think first of all, one of the things that amazes me and also creates a demand for my work is how unaware the average American is about what's happening in the world. And I find that that's exacerbated to some degree in rural America. And you've got folks, with all due respect, in this county whose understanding of the world is 25 years old. So one of the significant action strategies is to develop this sense of awareness of what's happening and what are the implications, of what is happening. Secondly, you've got to look at the short-term, mid-term, and long-term human capital development. And you have to have a workforce here that will keep employers here or attract new employers here. And then lastly, the presence of that workforce is going to include making this a desirable place to want to live. And related to that is I mentioned earlier, by 2050, less than half the population of this country will be white. So, the population growth and dynamics of America in that workforce and being a good place to live includes celebrating diversity. So, I think those are the 3 things that may not be popular, but they're real. And a lot of conversations need to be held throughout the county to raise this level of awareness.
Well, very good. I certainly appreciate you sharing that message with us today.
Sure.
Thanks for being on the show, Mr. Barlow.
You're welcome.
That's our show for today. Please join us again next week for another look at Armstrong School District's education today. Visit our website for updated news about the district, and have a great week.
Wow, that really helped me understand the economics of Armstrong County. It was invigorating and educational.
Even though it's already 2008, don't think it's too late for you to get involved in 21st century economics.
Hope to
See
see you
you
there.